Welcome to the SACNAS webinar on the value of mentorship. My name is Kateryna, and I'm honored to serve the SACNAS community as the Student Programs Manager. In this webinar, we will talk everything about mentorship because we believe that mentoring will provide you with opportunities to develop a sense of belonging and build a community within the college setting, and so much more. Before we get started, for our first-time attendees, welcome to SACNAS. We are an inclusive organization dedicated to achieving true diversity in STEM, where the field reflects to the demographics of our country's population. As the nation's largest multicultural and multidisciplinary STEM diversity organization, SACNAS creates space where all members, partners, and staff feel they belong and can embrace and celebrate their intersectional identities. If you're not yet, we invite you to join SACNAS as a member. You can sign up for free by visiting membership.sacnas.org. Please know that you may submit your questions via Q&A feature and we will answer as many as we can. We also encourage you to communicate with each other via chat. Just don't submit questions via chat as they will be missed. Remember to always be polite, mindful, and respectful to others with your comments. So now it's my pleasure to introduce today's panelist. Dr. Maricris Eleno-Orama has 10 years of experience in water, stormwater, and wastewater engineering design and planning projects throughout Washington State, and several years of experience as a chemistry engineering professor in higher education. She has been a professional engineer with Murraysmith, Inc. since 2019 and is currently on Murraysmith Corporate Social Responsibility Leadership Team, where she has helped initiate a company-wide outreach program focused on equity for local communities. Dr. Orama is also a co-founder of SCOPE, or Supportive Community of Professional Engineers, an outreach project focused on connecting students to local engineers and computer scientists within Pierce County, Washington. Our next speaker is Robin Lopez. Robin was born in Oakland and grew up in Richmond, California. He started his academic journey in Contra Costa College. Currently, Robin is pursuing a PhD in environmental science, policy, and management at UC Berkeley. He is very active in his community and serves as a mentor to many students in both his local community and the SACNAS network. And our last panelist today is Sonia Bustos Barocio. She works as a research associate in the Department of Ophthalmology, I will not pronounce that word correctly, at the University of California in Los Angeles, where she investigates gene therapy approaches for retinal degenerative diseases. As a community college student, Sonia was one of the founding members and former president of the Los Medanos College SACNAS chapter. She has presented her research at 3 SACNAS conferences and won an award in 2017 for her research presentation. During her spare time, Sonia enjoys reading, writing, cooking, and painting. So before we move to our Q&A portion of this webinar, I would like to invite the speakers to share a few words with our attendees. I will start with Mari.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mari, and it's such a pleasure to be here today. I'm very honored to be able to speak with you all about something I'm very passionate about. And it's not just mentorship, it's being able to connect and really help those around us be able to find what they are passionate about and be successful in their own careers. So if I had any advice that I can give you all, I think I'd actually have two. The first would be that yes, technical skills are very important in our careers and in our areas. But I think that there's this aspect of being well-rounded where we can communicate and verbally communicate our ideas, our thoughts, our own experiences. That's really important. And also just not forgetting about how collaborative our research efforts and our work can be. And the second would be to be okay with showing up every day as your true self. I think that it's really important that we stay true to ourselves and be able to laugh if we have a big laugh, joke around if we can, and be able to share our experience, our thoughts, again, and be able to speak up and express our voice. I feel as though the STEM workforce and the STEM areas just, you know, striving and really, really wants folks to be able to enjoy themselves and where they're at. And I think those around you would be able to enjoy themselves as well, knowing that you are genuine and you're showing up as yourself. And also, I feel as though being able to be your true self just gives you that bit of an edge. You know, we talk about diversity and inclusion, and you know, we want you to be you. We want you for who you are, your background, your experiences, and so just know that every day when you come into a classroom, an interview, a meeting, we want to see you.
Thank you so much, Mari. Sonia, would you like to go next?
Definitely. Hi, everybody. My name is Sonia. I went to Los Medanos College and then transferred on to UCLA, where I now work as a research associate. If I could give you one piece of advice, is to not be shy to ask for help and find people who can guide you to where you want to be. So for example, my parents, neither of them went to college. My dad barely graduated from middle school. So I never had a role model who can, in the professional field, who can guide me and tell me like how to get to where I need to be. And so I just started reaching out to my professors and asking them questions during office hours and kind of developing this relationship that allowed me to realize that there's something else out there. So I was just mentioning to Kateryna earlier that I didn't know you could get a doctorate in anything. Like every time I heard somebody say doctor, I thought they meant physical doctor, like a medical doctor. And so when I met one of my mentors, Dr. Traeger, she explained to me like, oh no, you can, go to school and you can get a doctorate in biology and then do research. And that's something I would have never known if I had not connected with her. So just don't be afraid to, make yourself known and get to know other people, whether it's your professors or your peers. Anyone could be a mentor, and it doesn't have to be one mentor who teaches you everything. You can have multiple mentors, maybe like somebody who teaches you technical stuff, like how to write essays, how to apply to grad school, how to get scholarships. And you can have another mentor who kind of guides you and tells you like where you might be interested in doing research or introduces you to other people. So reach out. The opportunities are out there. You just have to be brave enough to to get them.
Thank you, Sonia. Robin.
Thank you for having me here. Again, my name's Robin Lopez, pronouns he, him, and just also want to recognize that I'm tapping in on unceded territory of Ohlone people here in Richmond, California, and want to express my excitement that so many of you are tapping in to hear this on a Friday. For many of you who are on the West Coast, a Friday morning, because I understand a lot of us are having Zoom burnout, and for you to show up and be here, that's incredible. You should all be giving yourself a pat on the back for that. Maybe go post something on social media and like it yourself, just like, clout yourself up. I don't know. I will express wholeheartedly that the value of having mentorship is incredibly important with your career trajectory. I am tapping in right now after just coming off of another panel I was on for high school students, and was having similar conversations about them with this, that one person or one moment can entirely change the trajectory of your life. And that's exactly what happened to me. All it took was one person, and that one person created a wealth of opportunities for me. And it didn't happen overnight, but I will say that this person stayed on my case. And so mentors come in many different ways, shapes, and form. You heard from the two prior introductions that that is exactly how it happens. Sometimes they form organically, other times you just kind of get matched up with them through a program. And as Sonia had mentioned, take advantage of that. mentors in different capacities, whether it's through writing, learning technical skills in the classroom, internship, work mentors, but also peer mentors. I can't stress enough how important having peer mentors are, especially when you're going through the motions of academics. It's stressful. And I will 100% admit, like, I dealt with mental health issues on my end, trying to get through this, and having peer mentors where we could have these conversations. And as you heard from Mari, being able to become your authentic, whole, unapologetic self is critical. And having mentors that support that champion for you, will bring you all the more closer to the goals that you want to actualize. And I will end it with saying, you definitely want to find a mentor who's going to go up to bat for you, who's going to utilize their social capital for you, who is always going to be your champion, and will make sure that wherever you are in your life or your trajectory, that they're there to give you the advice that you need to hear, not the advice that you want to hear. I can't tell you enough how one of my mentors, who's a woman of color, has had to humble me several times to let me know, hey, you might be chewing off a bit more than you can eat right now. Let's recenter this energy. And I absolutely love that. And I acknowledge that that's a privilege to have someone who's that involved throughout my journey over the last 10 years. Not everyone has that luxury, but if you find someone like that, you're going to be in good shape.
Thank you for those words of wisdom, Robin. Thank you, the panelists. So now let's begin with the Q&A portion of this webinar. Please, again, to all our attendees, thank you for joining us this morning. Please use the Q&A function to submit your questions, and we will get started. So my first question to our panelists that came from attendees is, what is mentorship and who are the mentors? Who would like to go first?
I will go. If there's no one else, I don't mind answering the question first. So mentorship to me really is just about support. And it's more than just support. It's really being able to reach out and connect on more than just a professional level. And to me, it's not just about projects or the research you're doing. It's really taking an interest in that person as an individual. Speaking from as a mentor, I think that when I look at mentees, it's not just about the research that they want. It's about seeing them as a person as a whole, and being able to support them emotionally, mentally, and being able to help them in ways that they can not just focus on the work that they're doing, but also be able to, push them and encourage them on their trajectory to being successful in their career. For me, mentors have primarily happened, or at least my mentorship relationships have primarily happened organically, where it starts out as coffee or me really admiring a person for the work that they do, a skill set they might have, and just being able to see them work with others and just kind of picking at their brain and asking them all kinds of questions, like what is it that drives them, their passion. So it's not necessarily like a formal relationship, but to me, it's about connecting, it's about networking. And it really, I think mentors have kind of shown up in surprising ways. They could be former professors, they could be former deans that I've worked with, professors that I currently might work with, folks within my company that I might have seen on a post or a panel that I just reach out to and just want to be able to know what motivates them and how they've been able to be so successful in their career. So Sonia, you're shaking your head. Did you have anything to add?
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to say that once you do get to that place where you have a mentor and you've been networking and getting to know each other for a while, I think part of this mentorship relationship is trust. You have to trust the advice that they're giving you, kind of like what Robin said. I remember early on, it was my first summer as a community college student, and my mentor told me, she said, do this internship in South Carolina, you're gonna love it. And I said, South Carolina? Oh no, I don't want to go to South Carolina. I don't know how to do anything. I don't know anything about stem cells. I was scared. And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll apply. She ended up like emailing me more than once, like, have you applied? How's your application going? So she kind of guided me through the process I did not want to do, but I trusted her. So I ended up doing the whole thing. I did my internship. I mean, it was rough. I was failing a lot. I didn't know anybody, but I think that was like the most transformative experience that I ever had. From that experience, it's actually where I got to where I am now, because I ended up doing several internships after that at the NIH, working with the federal government, and that led me to get a scholarship, which paid for my tuition. And it just came back full circle. Now I work doing only stem cells. That's all I do, is I work studying how we can develop eye gene therapies. And so I trusted her, and it's that fine balance between trusting them, but also having a voice, because it's your career and it's your life. But just letting yourself go a little bit and trust that they will take you where you need to be.
And also, it sounds like being able to get out of your comfort situation and go to South Carolina. Robin, what is mentorship for you?
Mentorship for me is, well, before I get into share what that is, tangentially, I just want to acknowledge, the great work that you're doing, Sonia, and everyone who's tapping in and listening. The importance of stem cell research. If you are interested in stem cell research, please pursue it. Please make a difference and bring in that representation. Because if it wasn't for past folks who have conducted stem cell research, I wouldn't have had the ability to save a complete stranger's life through a bone marrow transplant. And I can never go through a presentation without acknowledging that. There's a lot of beauty in that, and knowing how far science has advanced. And that advancement is through mentorship and people who train up other folks to be able to push the boundaries of science. And for me, mentorship is helping other folks push those boundaries, actualize our potential. But also, mentorship to me is not this linear path or this linear line. Mentorship is a very nuanced, complex, multi-layered thing that happens. And one of those layers of mentorship is it has to be culturally and socially responsive for both folks involved, or if there's multiple folks involved. And when I mean socially, culturally responsive, like a mentor who's understanding of your situation and the dynamics you have to wrap yourself into due to your identity, your living situation or your environment, your lived experiences and truth. When you have mentors like that have that cultural responsiveness, it is very powerful. Folks who understand that there are certain things that you have gone through, maybe they have not experienced them, those situations themselves, but they entirely are cognizant and mindful of that. And when you have mentorship like that, it is beyond beautiful. And for me, that's what I embody mentorship as now. Like I have the privilege of mentoring a lot of younger scholars now, rising scholars, and being able to have that cultural and social awareness with them and responsiveness. It's been very empowering for them. And, just them texting me like, hey, I got this award, I got this happened. Thanks for telling me to put this in the essay about where I grew up. To me, I would say that's mentorship.
Can I add something to that, Kateryna? I think you're absolutely right, Robin. I think it's important to find many mentors, but especially mentors who come from a similar background or who look like you. Because I remember before I even got to South Carolina, my mentor told me, you're probably going to be the only Latina working there. And she was right. I was the only Latina in the whole department. So here I am with a bunch of people who are, you know, primarily white, and I'm wearing this really white lab coat with my brown skin, and people are just looking at me funny and these microaggressions. But had she not been there for me, I probably wouldn't be able to handle all of that. Just the stress of working in a new environment, not knowing anyone, and dealing with all the kind of racism going on. But she was very upfront about it. Like, you look, if this is the way it's going to be, this is how I got through it. I'm here with you. Let's make this work. And I think that was really valuable early on, because even now at UCLA, I don't know any other Mexican female scientist who does the same thing I do. So it can be a little bit discouraging, but it's these people who help you on. They're kind of like your cheerleaders who kind of get you to the finish line, despite how difficult it may be. And a lot of the journeys in science, they tend to be challenging. So I think having that team is really important.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I will encourage our attendees to introduce themselves in chat and write their institution if they're attending community college, or they're attending four-year university, or they're in graduate school, so our panel can get a better idea of who we have behind the screen. But my next question to you all, you spoke about the importance of mentorship and how it is life-changing. Now let's get to the core. There are many people who hear, who hear about other people's mentorships experience, about their amazing mentors, but really don't know how to go about it. And some might be shy, or some might not know what they need to do. So could you share best practices in approaching and maintaining relationship with potential mentors?
I guess I have a couple of things to say about that, because I'm in the process of applying to grad school, and I've been reaching out to a lot of people. And I think that it may feel a little bit weird to reach out to someone you don't know or you haven't met, but it's perfectly fine to send a cold email. And but there's a way to do it. Like, you should introduce yourself briefly, and don't ask questions that are super long that they might not want to answer. Like, you start by emailing somebody and then kind of developing that relationship a little bit through email. And then maybe at some point you might ask them for coffee. But if you already know somebody and you know that they're like really friendly and approachable, then I think it would be easier to start with people you already know, like your professors, your peers. If you have a Mesa Center, people who are in the same space. But I think the most important thing is to not be afraid, because chances are most people are, they're likely to want to help you if they're not too busy. But I think it is important to acknowledge that people are busy, especially the people who are like higher up in academia. They may not have the time to mentor, but it's still worth a shot, maybe through email or in person.
And I'll chime in from there too and say, having those conversations is also important to, and I know this can be very uncomfortable, but it's very important to ask, what are the expectations? What are the expectations of them for the mentee, and what are the expectations for them themselves as the mentor? Sometimes people go into these mentor-mentee relationship and there is no clear defined expectation or responsibility, and so then accountability can sometimes inadvertently break down. And that's something you definitely want to keep in the back of your mind when you're considering mentors, and when you approach someone, take it from the back of your mind and prioritize it. I can't tell you enough how beneficial it is. It is uncomfortable the first time doing it, but after you do it the first 1 or 2 times, it becomes really organic and easy to have that conversation. Just be like, hey, yo, I would really love to have you as a mentor. What are your expectations, or what are your availability? Or are you expecting me to, email you or Zoom or have lunch post-pandemic? How is this going to work out? Or if it's a research-based type mentor, understanding that's where you really need to have those conversations on expectation, because some research-based mentors are expecting you to produce a presentation that shows the culmination of your work, or there are some who expect you to produce at least a 10-page written report on your summer research or the research you did during that academic year. And so having those expectations clearly and explicitly outlined, it sets up a good rubric for how to move forward in that mentor-mentee relationship.
Thank you, Robin. Marie.
So naturally, I am a very introverted person. So when I first started thinking of mentorship, I really didn't have a lot of guidance and a lot of experience with meeting folks for coffee and reaching out to even professors for additional help. It was just not something I was comfortable with. And I feel as though it may even be cultural based, where it's not necessarily encouraged to have these types of relationships with your professors. But I really started viewing mentorship as a necessity, because there's just a lot of information that's not going to be available online or published in a document or report, where you can get these tips or helpful aspects of the different research or disciplines or just jobs out there that are going to be available to you. So I think that a part of it is just being okay with being a little uncomfortable about reaching out and asking for the insight and asking for the help. It's something I still have challenges with even today. It's just not something I'm very comfortable with, but I've started to become more comfortable with it and being okay with being uncomfortable about asking folks to, meet up and for their experience and for their insight. Again, I know that can be very intimidating to reach out to someone who may be mid-level or senior level or even above. But if you really want that person to be a mentor, don't be afraid to be persistent about it. I think as though mentor relationships don't have to be scheduled and don't necessarily have to have a continuous meetup every month. But if you want to be persistent, send them updates and let them know what's going on and questions you might have. Don't be afraid to be persistent and don't be afraid to follow up. I think Sonia had mentioned folks may be very busy, and it's very understandable with this time, especially with COVID and folks having lots going on. But schedule that time ahead of time. Just keep trying to find ways for you to meet with folks that you would love, in your life, and to be supported and to be supported by.
And may I add one last thing? I think if you're absolutely stuck and you don't know where to start, look at someone, let's say it's like a professor that you want to work with. Sometimes these people are very active on social media, so you may learn a lot about who they are, what they're into, and that way you have a feeling of okay, maybe I don't know this person, but I know about them. It might make that conversation go a little bit more smooth. But I think one of the ways I got to meet some really amazing people is I would just send them an email or a message and say, hey, look, I think your work is so cool. I would love to learn more about how you got there, and just ask them to talk about themselves, because I think a lot of people love to talk about themselves and they get excited, and it's something that will kind of get that conversation going in the right direction. So you don't want to ask them to tell you their whole life story through email, but if you've already made contact and things are going well, be like, can I treat you to lunch? Can I get you some coffee? I would love to learn more about your experience at Stanford and how you were able to work on this project. And then naturally that relationship will develop, because then they'll want to ask you who you are, and they'll be interested. Okay, why is this person interested in me? And then they'll want to help. I think that sometimes if you straight out say, hey, I need a mentor, they might be a little scared, like, oh no, I don't have time to mentor anyone else. Sometimes these really high profile people are like, but if you're just getting to know them and it's going nicely, then I think that you will get there without having to exactly ask them for mentorship.
And to kind of add to what Sonia was just saying, again, I think I mentioned how it's still a challenge for me, and it can be a scary thing for me to just send a cold email out to folks. But being on the opposite end, when I've had students reach out to me or folks just within the community wanting to just talk about the work that I do with the research or, just jobs within my discipline, it's exciting. And it's easy to see how passionate somebody could be if they're willing to reach out to someone they don't know to have a quick meetup or a chat or a phone call, or just, again, talking about just the opportunities that they may have within your discipline. So again, just don't be afraid. I think that when I send it out, I always feel as though somebody may view me as, incapable or just asking for help, or, I have lots of things that go through my mind that keep me from sending out like all the emails. But when I do have people reach out to me, or again, students that send me updates, it's exciting. It's exciting to hear your passion, what you're involved in, updates. I mean, so just stay persistent with it.
And then one other thing about updates, don't send them like monthly updates because people are busy. So if you can send every 6 months, every year, I kind of update my mentors every time I have like a big life accomplishment. Like when I graduated from UCLA, I probably sent out like 10 emails, just like reaching out to people like, hey, I made it. It took me 6 years, but I finally got my bachelor's and now I'm going on to grad school. And usually they're really happy to hear about that. And it kind of gets that relationship going, because another thing about mentorship is, yeah, once you find a mentor, how do you maintain that relationship? Like one of my mentors is in Washington, D.C., and I haven't seen her in like 4 years, but I still keep in touch with her so that she knows who I am. One, because I want to keep her as a mentor, and two, because if I do need a letter of rec from her, I want her to remember who I am, because I know a lot of researchers, they meet a lot of people, especially summer interns, and it's a 6-week internship, and maybe, I don't know, they'll probably remember who you are, but it's good to remind them that you're still passionate and you're still, in the game.
Thank you for sharing. You are giving so much information that it covers, as I think, covers other questions that came through. Someone asked how to be a good mentee. Be like what just Sonia shared. Follow up with your mentors, give them updates. Yeah, maybe you have other additional tips on how to be a good mentee.
I would say a tip on being a good mentee is don't ghost your mentor. Don't leave their text messages on read. Don't ignore their emails or wait to reply to their emails like 2 months later. Not, if you're dealing with certain life situations that make it difficult to respond in a timely manner, then try to find a comfortable space and time to communicate that to them when possible. But if it's just because you're just arbitrarily busy and you're reading it, but you're not prioritizing it, even though they have just went out of the way to follow up with you and see how you're doing, that can make it really difficult for them to want to follow up again. I've had situations like that with a couple mentees, and thankfully we were able to, kind of address the issue and make sure things were okay. But it certainly does work wonders when you communicate pretty consistently with your mentors, and at least just keep in the loop. If you got things going on, like I'm not always comfortable sharing things that go on in my life. I can be an open book at times, but there are also very specific things that I don't like sharing. There was a moment in time early in the pandemic where I was not comfortable sharing that I had lost loved ones to COVID, or that my family business had entirely suffered, and that really took away from my ability to do things. But I also was at a point in my life where I was comfortable enough to at least communicate in vague terms that, hey, things are going on. And this is kind of what I meant earlier when I said culturally and socially responsive mentorship. My mentors understood there's a pandemic happening. I understood with my mentees there's a pandemic happening. And so there was no ill feelings about lack of communication. But definitely as a mentee, you do want to make sure that if there is a lack of communication on your end, that you're finding a way to articulate or contextualize why that's so. Because you never want to sour a relationship with a good mentor. The mentor is probably never going to leave you behind or anything like that. They'll always be there for you, but that's not always the case. And if a mentor does kind of leave you behind because of lack of communication on your end, maybe there's an issue with their mentorship. I'm not taking any personal stabs at anyone, but a good mentor is consistent with following up and not giving up on their mentees. But it is a two-way street, and you do need to make sure that you're doing your part to communicate.
Can I add something to that? I want to say now, since we're already talking about, maybe how to have a healthy relationship with your mentors, I think having too many mentors can be difficult, because when you're getting so much advice, you're going to have to turn somebody down, right? So when I was transferring, I was debating between going to UC Berkeley, Cornell, or UCLA. And like my top mentors were advocating for different universities. Like I remember one person saying, you have to go to Cornell because it's an Ivy League and you're going to get opportunities that you won't get elsewhere and stuff like that. But deep in my heart, I knew why I wanted to go to UCLA was to get this experience working with stem cells that I couldn't get anywhere else. So although that particular conversation could have been difficult, like I didn't say, hey, I'm not going to take your advice. I said, look, I appreciate your advice. You're a person I respect. I'm going to take this other road because I think it's better for me, but I still want to keep in touch with you. I still value everything you have to say, and I'm eternally grateful for everything you've done. And because I did it that way, I was able to maintain that relationship, even though I didn't directly do what my mentor told me to do. And so I think it's important to develop impactful relationships, but also like Robin said, it's a two-way relationship. And it can be vulnerable at times, and it can be sometimes difficult to navigate. But as he mentioned, if it's a real mentor, a true mentor, they're not going to give up on you just because you didn't do what they said. They're just going to, kind of keep an eye on you and kind of help you in the way that they can. But I think it is important to recognize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that we were talking about being persistent and giving updates, but as a mentee, life has these ups and downs where, every couple months there are going to be amazing news or big news to always have to announce. So I think being a good mentee is also communicating times when you do need extra support or help in different ways. I think good mentors aren't just there to help you along your educational journey or just your career. They're really going to want you to be the best at who you are, and want you to perform at your best always. So I think good mentors will also be able to help you connect to different resources or other folks that may be able to support you better than they are, or they can. And I think that's really important for mentors to kind of understand their limitations as well. And just say, this isn't something I may be able to help you with, but I can definitely connect you to. I think that as mentors, we have the social network and people that, can help in different ways and support, and being able to direct our mentees to those folks is really important. So in terms of kind of maintaining that relationship, again, also being able to reach out and just say, I might be struggling with a class. I'm not quite sure what I'm doing, or, I'm thinking about changing my major and I'm really nervous about doing that. Communicating these fears, anxieties, and kind of working them through, because your mentors are also people. We also have these experiences. We also have these ups and downs that we've experienced. I've not done very well in a lot of my classes and aspects of my career, and I know I've had to reach out for folks for help, and let them know, like, I feel like I'm very overwhelmed or drowning here, and just reaching out to my mentors for that extra guidance has been really important and very impactful for me.
Thank you.
want to drop something, because Mari just mentioned something that make me think of something specific that happened with me. And it isn't to center me or but it's to highlight as a very clear, explicit example of that communication. And Some of the roles or responsibilities we do have, and if we are operating in that mentee capacity, that, Mari had mentioned, your mentors, they may not have all the right answers, but they could guide you to the right resources. And when I was in community college, my best friend had died by suicide, and I had dropped out of college again. And that was probably the third or fourth time I dropped out of college. It was the last time I did. But I remember communicating to all my mentors, like, hey, I just lost my best friend. I've known him for over half my life. Everything that we've ever done, good or bad, we've done together. I feel like I just had my whole soul ripped out of me. I can't do this. I'm overwhelmed. I'm depressed. I don't have the motivation to do any of this. I feel guilty for enjoying life when he can't. And they were none of them made me feel bad for that. A couple of them guided me towards resources on campus. Others guided me towards resources at the county level because I didn't have medical insurance, and so I couldn't afford therapy. One mentor had someone hand deliver me a book because I stopped going to school on how to dealing with grief when losing someone in that manner. And so the power of being able to communicate does really help you in those vulnerable moments, that it's not just sharing with your mentor that something happening that's causing you to struggle or making you feel overwhelmed. It's also it's a tool for them to be able to better support you. And that's why communication is very important as a mentee, because the more they know about you and the more information they have, the more effective and responsive they can be to your specific situation and your identity and experiences. And so I just want to plug that in, and also plug in the importance again of peer mentorship during that period of my life and being able to talk with people about what had happened. But yes, your mentors, if they don't themselves have the tools to help you, they will guide you to the right people and resources.
This is great. I love this discussion because we do have professionals on this webinar as well, and some of them did ask how to be a better resource for our students. So the tips you are sharing right now, is not just for the mentees, but it's also for potential mentors. And Mari mentioned about different level of mentors that leads us to the next question. Someone asked, are mentors strictly those who you have met in your education career? Maybe you could talk more about different type of mentors throughout someone's life.
So actually, my first mentor was someone who lived down the street who caught me doing something bad. So when I was in middle school, school started to become a bit of a bore, and I started having friends that were much older and kind of giving into peer pressure and different types of activities. So I was jumping out of a window and he was walking his dog, and he was a neighbor who was part of the neighborhood watch and just knew all of the families and all of the children. And he pulled me aside one day and just said, what are you doing? What is your plan? Why aren't you in school? Why aren't you doing more? And he just kind of grilled me about what my life was and what I was interested in and my passions. And he realized that I very much did like school, but just didn't like the topics or my classes, or didn't agree with, the curriculum that I was given. And so again, it may be folks that you might meet along the way, but there are these individuals that will come across and kind of find you, I feel, and they'll get, have this interest in you that's just beyond, your career or your abilities, and just really look at you as a person. And I think that it's just really important to acknowledge that sometimes, because again, I feel mentors show up in different times of your life in different places. And they are going, and again, the really good ones will want you to be whole, will want you to be at your best. And so he still lives down the street from me, and he will still ask me questions about my career and making sure that I'm giving my 110% in whatever it is. And so, you know, these mentors, just keep an eye out for people who, you know, see you for you.
Yeah, and I want to share that made me think about my childhood and a couple people that surfaced. One of them, one of my first mentors, who non-academic, was the school janitor. God bless his heart. His name was Leon, and Leon caught me doing something that was pretty bad, and I think I was only in the like third or second grade. So I mean, I was way too young to be doing the things I was doing, but he just pulled me to the side. He's like, "Hey, man, like, what's going on? Like, you know, don't you want to be cool?" And because you know, everyone at the school thought Leon the janitor was the coolest person in the world, and so he's like, "Don't you want to be cool?" Like he's doing like all the little swagger move, and I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Well, then you shouldn't do that." And he, you know, started talking to me about, you know, staying focused in school, and very similar conversations like, well, I mean, the teacher's whack, the school's whack, you know, everything was whack. I just went down the whole list, and he's like, okay, well, how can you make it not whack, you know? And so, you know, having those very intentional conversations, someone just stepping in and, you know, identifying like there's a person who has a need, and in that moment he was very socially responsive. He's seen a fellow person of color, much younger than him, that uh, just needed a little bit of guidance and talking to. And I'll never forget, like he ended up talking to my mom later that day when she came and picked me up from school. I thought like, man, Leon's a snitch. Like he's gonna get me in trouble. uh, but it was cool, and you know, Leon had nothing but good words to say to my mother, and like I always respected that. He didn't like just throw me under the bus. And I'll say, you know, now another informal mentor I have that's non-academic is someone who I consider a dear friend, who's also the bike shop owner of the local bike shop out here in Richmond. His name's Najari. Love Najari to death, and like he's always there to like remind me that we have a lot of big ideas, and it's okay to always have an open heart with people, because I acknowledge, like, due to the way society has conditioned me and conditioned many other men to like perpetuate toxicity and reinforce the patriarchy, like those are things I'm like always trying to unlearn continually. Um, he has really guided me on a good path on like how to unlearn some of these very toxic traits and how to be more effective in communicating with younger men in our community to move with intent and purpose, but with also with accountability. And that's not something I really have gotten out of a academic mentor, because academia can be a very strange place that reinforces all of that.
Thank you, Robin. Sonia, would you like to add about your experiences maybe with different type of mentors throughout the life?
Sure. I think I had a very different experience growing up. So I immigrated from Mexico, and when I first got to the United States, I went to this really bad elementary school, middle school, where everybody was cutting class. I mean, you can hear gunshots from the classroom. It was really bad. So like if I didn't go to class that one day, nobody would notice, nobody cared, or I felt like nobody cared. And then my parents kind of got scared of this neighborhood. They were like, oh, let me take her to a different place. So they worked some way to get me into another high school. And there it was mostly people who were from a privileged background, really white. I was the only Latina I knew. I didn't have any other Latino friends in high school. So there I also felt like, oh man, nobody really cares. If I didn't go to class, if I didn't go to school, nobody noticed. It wasn't until I got to community college where I started seeing a lot of people who were like from a similar background as I, and who I had professors who really cared. Like if I didn't turn in my homework, oh, I got an email from my teacher, like what's going on and stuff like that. I always felt like at the community college, I got all the support I needed and all the mentorship I needed. But outside from academia, I think my biggest role model, it's probably my dad, because he always told me like, look, I didn't go to school and I like taught myself how to do math and all of that. So you have all these opportunities, like if you're not taking advantage of them, like you're missing out. So I think it was mostly like my family who was outside of academia, who was always pushing me to like reach my highest potential. But that's why I think mentorship is important for people like us who kind of are making it along the way, to go back and kind of help people who get lost in between the cracks, or people who really don't have anyone to reach out to, or maybe they don't know anyone or don't feel comfortable to. So that's why I think one of my favorite things is to like volunteer with organizations who help people who are at those stages at the elementary, middle school, high school level, so they can kind of figure out their way early on.
Thank you for sharing. I have two similar and yet different questions that came through that are aligning with the conversation we're having right now. How to look for and connect with mentors after finishing college. So let's say someone wants to still have that connection with the mentor in the academia, but now they graduated. And so maybe you have some tips for that.
I have a really good tip for that. And I will use the example that Sonia gave when she said she sent out like 10 different emails after she graduated. Emailing people, this is, that mentee responsibility of communicating, emailing people to let them know your successes and where you're at in those life stages could lead to them saying, replying back like, hey, congratulations. See you got your degree in this or that. Would love to connect you with one of my colleagues over here. It just happened very fluidly like that often. It happened like that for me. And I know it's happened like that for a lot of other people I know. It's not 100% that's what happened, but that's typically what happens when you have a good mentor-mentee relationship and you update people on, that big event of graduating college. They will ask you, okay, congratulations, what's the next steps? Or do you need me to plug you with someone? And Sonia also mentioned social media. I cannot stress the importance of the power of social media, both LinkedIn and Twitter. Twitter, I found a lot of informal academic mentors just off of mutual interest, or they find me, like they see when I post another hot topic tweet that like gets buzzing, like then other people are like following me and they're like, we really love what you have to say, like, want to keep in contact. And it's been really dope because like now I got people DMing me about offering me postdoc positions. And like that, to me, I just find that entirely hilarious that that's how it might be happening. But that is probably the best way to find other mentors in academia or in research or any other capacity after you finish college, following up with your current mentors who utilize that social capital for you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. So my dissertation chair was someone I adored, and just because we had to work so closely with my own research, he must have been like speed dial on my phone for a good 2 years of my life. So letting that person know what type of impact they've had and how much that person and their efforts has meant is really important to communicate. I think it's really important to let your mentors know how much you appreciate them, and letting them know just because you're going to be done with school or your research, that relationship isn't going to be over. But also letting them know, just like Robin had said, is there anyone that you can connect me with at my, next school or next venture or next, area that they might know. So it's really interesting, as my dissertation chair doesn't have a background in engineering. And so it was a little bit different, but having him connect me with folks along the way, and meeting up with them and finding, folks from them, again, that social network and that social capital is so valuable. When you have a mentor being very vocal about like who you'd like to be mentored by and what type of support you need, making sure that you communicate that to your current mentors is really important so that they can continue helping you in that aspect.
Thank you all so much. The time is slipping away from us today, and this discussion has been great. I definitely want to ask last question that I think very important. We talked about the beauty of mentorship, and you all shared your experiences with great people you met throughout your life. I wonder, are there any red flags that you have experienced with any of the mentors? And what are some advice in how to face them?
I wouldn't necessarily say they were red flags. Looking back, I would say that it was definitely a learning experience, because I think up front when I've had a formal mentor, that person may have stepped kind of beyond my expectations of what I was hoping that person to do. So it wasn't just guidance or insight that person was doing. This mentor was actually acting on ways that he felt can help me. And it was a way that I just didn't agree with. So I think in terms of these red flags, again, I thought that it was more of a learning experience, but and I think Robin had touched on it earlier about being very vocal about the expectations you have with your mentors. And looking back, I wish I had been a better advocate for myself and kind of putting my foot down and explaining to that mentor, what it was that really bothered me and how I felt he had overstepped. It would have helped him as a mentor to be able to help his other mentees. And I think that looking back, it could have been a great relationship. Even though I may not have agreed with something he did, I think that he still had this experience and valuable insight that I could have benefited from had I just had the courage to speak up. I kind of did what, again, Robin had said, just kind of ghosted and just stopped talking. And that was inappropriate on my part, but it was something I can definitely look back upon and learn from.
I want to add a little bit to that. I think communication is really important because it tells you how the relationship is going. I remember I had this one mentor and I think we were pretty close. And I asked her for a letter of rec for this internship at NASA. And she's like, yeah, I'll do it. And then, I asked her like 6 months in advance, which is something I probably shouldn't have done. But then I kept emailing her like, oh, how's it going? She never emailed me back. And then later on, I found out she didn't turn in my letter of rec. I ended up going because I had other recommenders who were able to like step in and write another letter. But I think that if your mentor is not emailing you back and they're ghosting you, I think it's like, okay, that's pretty much done unless they have something going on in their lives, which is like very likely and a possibility that, something happens, and there are people too, they need to step out and take a break every now and then. But I think in those situations, it's good to be cautious, not to expect too much from them if they're not being communicative.
And then I will share, like I echo both of those prior statements, and mentorship is, I try to see more so as like going through iterations of the relationships and expectation. At first, I was thinking, man, I've been very fortunate and lucky. I don't think I've had a bad experience at all, and like that is very lucky on my part. But then when Sonia just mentioned communication, it triggered something that I've been blocking out for a few years. It was one of my master's mentors, and I will not name them. I'm not like that, but they ghosted me. They left the program. They didn't bother giving me a heads up. They knew that they were already prepping to leave when I applied. And I had a intermediate proposal that I was giving them, a 12-page report on artificial neural networking and well borehole analysis, like the whole 9 yards. Like I was like really excited about it, submitted it. at midnight, and then a couple hours later, he replied, oh, the project cut, I'm leaving the campus. And that just kind of blew me, because I went to the campus with the intent to do a master's thesis and like was really hoping things would be great. And I say I blocked that out of my mind because I know that's not mentorship. And I know that's not how normal mentors conduct themselves. And I also know like that's the type of person I should avoid. And it taught me a very valuable life lesson about expectation and asking those questions. If you're thinking in grad school, you got to ask your PI, are you thinking about taking offers elsewhere, or do you plan to stay here for the long term? Because they may be able to take you with them to the new institution, but that doesn't mean you're ready to make that move if they decide to relocate, or they're just not being transparent or honest about what they're going, what they are thinking about doing, and that's a disservice to the students. So I would say lack of communication on the mentor's part could be a major red flag. And I would say again, social media. It's easy to go on Twitter if someone's profile is public and look at what they like. And I could tell you, when I was being recruited for PhD programs, it made it very easy to eliminate potential advisors when I seen some of the tweets that they were liking from a very vile person who was previously in leadership. And so little things like that, like Sonia had mentioned earlier, you could kind of go through the back door and find information on potential people you're going to be interfacing with and make the best informed decision.
Thank you so much. Thank you, speakers, and thank you for this valuable discussion on this Friday morning. Let me tell you about the online community we have here at SACNAS, where you can continue this discussion and connect with one another. You're invited to join our online community college group. Follow the link on the screen. Or I wanted to post a link in chat and now I lost our chat. And sign up to your SACNAS membership to get started. Who knows, maybe you can meet your next mentor in this online community or serve as a peer mentor. Lastly, we want to hear from you. Immediately after this webinar, you will be redirected to a brief survey. I encourage you to provide feedback and suggestions for the future webinars you would like to hear from us. I would also like to invite each of you to join us for another free virtual event specifically for community college students happening at the end of April to help equip and empower you for degrees and future careers in STEM. Last year was our first virtual event, and this year we will continue doing it. And I definitely invite you, and I cannot tell you enough how much fun our students having during this event. I hope you all enjoyed today's discussion and have a better idea about the importance of mentorship and what you need to do to have that special person in your life. And also be a great mentor to your peers. Mentorship will help you be retained and persist towards a successful competition, whether that be the attainment of a certificate, technical degree, or transfer to a four-year institution. This concludes our webinar. Thank you again to all speakers for taking the time to share your stories, and all attendees for your engagement and insightful discussion. I'll see you next time.